she's in the room, you know, it's such a special feeling when she's in the room. It's like, to me, she just holds up this quiet, you know, invisible flag that says, you know, I'm here.
This is my beautiful sister, Anika. I'm going to tell you the story about how she became so different. She doesn't look very different, but she is. And I've invited my lovely family members to explain.
Well, Anika is this calm. She has a real calmness and a peace about her.
She's a peaceful little bird.
I just remember thinking she was like the most beautiful baby because she was very beautiful.
As I said before, she's different. So let's start at the birth.
Anika is my first grandchild, so watching your mum, Shannon, have Anika was actually quite a traumatic experience for me because I didn't like seeing Shannon in pain.
I was just really super excited to meet Anika. It was really early in the morning and my waters broke. Then I knew I was going into labour. I was having very small contractions. It wasn't till the evening that we went into hospital because the contractions were close enough to be in active labour. I remember Mum like sobbing because seeing me in a lot of pain was really hard for her to deal with, and so she was crying and I was like, I needed everyone to be silent while I was like really trying to concentrate getting through each contraction. And I remember getting quite annoyed at her because I was like, everyone needs to be silent. And then she was crying in the corner and I was like, I can still hear you. I grew angry.
But when Anika arrived, it was an absolutely beautiful. I was so pleased that I was there, although I said to her after that, that's it, I'm not going to be it anymore.
So I believe it was just over 24 hours. You know, most babies look like little drowned squash rats, but she actually looked quite beautiful straight off the bat, unlike her sister Isabel. The moment she was born was just magic, like that. I've never had emotions like that.
On the 12th of February, Anika Izzy Godfrey was born. But 2 weeks later, she got sick.
Yeah, so she was only 2.5 weeks old. She was such a routine, chilled baby that it was quite obvious that something wasn't quite right. She had missed a feed at night. She'd slept through and she hadn't done that before.
I remember, you know, her ringing me and saying, Mum, I just don't think that things are right for Anika.
It's obvious that she's quite uncomfortable or not feeling great, so I think it's best that we take her into hospital and just get her checked out.
And all the way hoping and praying that she'd be all right, that, you know, once she was in hospital, they would quickly be able to diagnose her and, you know, and treat her. Well, that wasn't the case at all.
By the time I got to the hospital, it was really obvious that I had a really sick baby. She even changed colour. She went from like looking normal to like looking grey. And they took her into the treatment room and straight away started doing blood tests and poking and prodding her. And then they said to us, would like to do a lumbar puncture to check to see if it's meningitis. You know, can we do that? I said, yeah. And then they came out and they said, we've done the lumbar puncture and the culture's come back and she has meningitis.
Late onset meningitis, which basically means that like the meningitis had got a hold of her before she showed any symptoms, so it was already very well developed. When births are over 24 hours, you're meant to be tested for some sort of thing that you can get in the birth canal that can give you meningitis.
And at the time, meningitis was something that there'd been this big campaign about meningitis and not sharing drink bottles, and because there was a few deaths, and so there was adverts on TV and things talking about like meningitis and never share drink bottles and things like that, because you can't share spit because you can get meningitis and get really, really sick and die. So I remember thinking like, whoa, like this isn't supposed to happen to me. Like,
the neurologist said that she wouldn't survive and call all the family together and to say goodbye to her. And she was 2 weeks old.
She got to a point that overnight where she had started to have severe seizures, and I think at this point they'd started to put her on life support. She was hooked up to a lot of drugs and they were trying to find the right antibiotic and find the right medication to help her, but nothing was working. When they started to take her off this medication, then they said what's most likely going to happen is her brain is going to start seizuring again, or she's going to start having seizures.
The most vivid moment was when we were in the family meeting and having to decide whether to turn the life support off. You know, like having to make that decision. Like, do you think forever if you made the wrong decision? You know, like, do you think maybe she could have lived?
And I remember as well, like sitting next to her in her room and saying, it's okay, like, you don't need, if you don't want to fight anymore, you don't have to, like, it's okay if you're ready to go, because, yeah, she had started to shut down. That was their recommendation, that they were going to take her off life support, and that she wouldn't breathe on her own without it. But they were wrong. They were wrong.
She declared she wanted to live because she took out her breathing tube herself and she started breathing on her own.
And I remember thinking, whoa, like, she's pretty tough if she can, because it goes right down their throat and she just spewed it back up. And I remember like thinking, oh, she's actually saved me from a very hard decision.
And so they started to take her off these medications that had her sedated, and again they thought that she was going to die, and said to say goodbye.
You know, most of her brain has been damaged and from the seizuring, and well, you'll have to say goodbye to her again.
She got really, really sick, and they told us that she will only live for hours, kind of days. Then it went into a month, and then it went into a few months, and then it went into a year. And now she's 17.
When it's a long way back to the midway, it's a long way back to the screw. It's a long way back to the Coliseum.
What I love about Anika is that through all of her adversities, she's lived through it all.
She is special needs. She's in a wheelchair. Can't talk, can't walk, can't eat. But can give emotions out and can definitely react to people's voices.
It still hasn't really hit me that other families don't all have disabilities. Knowing other people's families, you can see their kind of versions of disabilities. Like I see every family has a different struggle that they deal with, so Anika was never an outsider. One of the questions that I've been asked is, why do you keep her alive? And that's probably what inspired the documentary the most. That's a silly question. For one, we didn't. She did. She stayed alive because she is a bloody survivor. Two, why wouldn't we?
I also think that although, you know, her story and what happened, I mean, it is what happened, but it didn't end there. You know, we did go home and she is 17 now, and the story, it continues.
She teaches us about love, she teaches us about acceptance, she teaches us about vulnerability, and she teaches us about ourselves and how we operate in the world. And this is beautiful Anika.
You know, I'm here. You know, yes, I don't have sight. Yes, I don't have movement. I don't have speech. But I'm here and I'm a person, and I'm just as important as every other person here in this room. And she holds that flag up for everyone with disabilities.
Big smile. Anika, you're gonna trick the audience. Yeah, she is.